Now, from somewhere in beautiful downtown Burbank, NBC once more tries to prevent...
What happens when two bass road warriors spend quality time talking music and life with one of their peers? Bassist, educator, author David C. Gross and bassist and head honcho of KnowYourBassPlayer.com, Tom Semioli, trade dates with the legends of rock, jazz, funk, blues, folk, country, and more. Notes from an Artist, revealing conversations with the legends who've created the soundtrack of our lives. What happens? You're about to find out. It's another episode of Notes from an Artist.
Hi, I'm Murray Lender. I've spent my life baking Lender's bagels. Now, is baking bagels a life's work? Well, it's not so easy baking a bagel that's always crispy on the outside. It's not so easy baking a bagel that's always soft and chewy on the inside. It's not so easy telling people that after all those years of eating toast for breakfast, now there's something better. But it's not so hard either.
Lender's. Since 1927, bakers of better bagels.
This holiday, buy gefilte fish in gleaming glass jars, made in the finest tradition of Passover under strict rabbinical supervision.
Delicately light, always right. Gefilte fish in jars.
Choose your favorite brand at your local food market.
We welcome our listener back to a mostly Jewish episode of Notes from an Artist.
Have a nagila, have two nagilas, have three. Why not? They're small.
David, I don't want to cavil, but this is one of our most cherished interviews. We have been meaning to air an episode on Gentile Giant since we began our podcast back in the Old Testament days. You remember those days?
Yeah, I had 10 commandments. What can I tell you?
Now, before we do the show, David, greet our listener. Perhaps she wants a nosh.
Well, you know, she's in the Westport area, so there's a great deli, Leo's there. So, hi, Karen. How are you today?
Now, David, I asked, were they gentle? Were they giants? Who knows? We'll find out during our interview. Actually, they were nice Jewish boys from Glasgow, Scotland. The Shulman brothers. Sounds like a law firm.
That's it. Just give me a second to get my bearings. I don't know where the hell it is.
Well, look at it this way, David. If you get injured on the job or fall on the sidewalk in front of your neighbor's house because they were too lazy to shovel, call the Shulman brothers.
Sue is a verb.
Our guest is Derek Shulman, a real mensch of a rock star and a very successful record company businessman. Derek knew how to schmooze. He was no putz, David. And I don't have to tell you that to be in the music business, you got to be a little mashugana.
Well, that's for damn sure.
Derek is here to talk about his new books, Giant Steps from Stage Lights to Executive Heights, which will be out in October 2025 on Jawbone Books. It's available in hard copy and digital formats. It's not the Torah, but it's a very good book.
It's a great book. It really is. And I don't have to read it backwards, which is even easier.
You know, David, as an Italian-American, I feel a kinship to Derek. Jewish boys and Italian boys are mama's boys. They want their sons to become lawyers, doctors. They feed us too much. Entenmann's crumb cake. Remember, you always had the Entenmann's?
That's
it. I don't know if they had that in Scotland. And there's always food on the table. And they're always asking us, when are we going to get married? And then when we bring home a girl, she's not good enough for my son. You know, I can never understand, David, when my Jewish friends called out or cried out, Shabbat Shalom. I was like, what are you, Sylvester Stallone? I don't get it. What's that all about?
Well, To be perfectly honest, it was an important thing back in the day. Unfortunately, in this 21st century, I don't think religion is getting due it deserves. I think in a lot of cases, the whole Jewish thing is more cultural than religious.
Yes, I agree with that, David. Very, very insightful.
That's because
You're
I
a
read my Haftorah. Do you know I got thrown out of Hebrew school?
Why did you get thrown out of Hebrew school, David?
I just was not a good kid.
You were not a good kid. You're such a nice Jewish boy. I don't understand.
However, the rabbi, for a fee, obviously, came to the house and taught me everything I needed to know to do my bar mitzvah.
All right. And did you part the Red Sea by any chance?
No, I only parted the Dead Sea.
All right. Well,
I never play in sea. So
you never play in the Dead Sea. You wouldn't know. Gentle Giant, one of the great prog rock groups in the 70s, along with King Crimson, yes, Genesis, and Jethro Tull. I enjoyed their forays into pop music when they got less progressive. And Derek gives us a fascinating look at Gentle Giant and his career as a record producer. A record executive, I'm sorry.
A record executive, yeah.
Yes.
And what's interesting is all the quote-unquote hair bands I was in, I understood very, very well exactly what he was talking about in the book. A lot of great stories. You can't be a musician and an executive. No, Derek showed us that you could be both.
Look at that. And you still have your hair, David.
Well, some of it left.
And most of it. Anyway, before we get to our interview, it's time for the plugs. Notes from an Artist can be heard live on internet radio every Monday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on www.cygnusradio.com, and you cue that up on the browser of your choice. You can also download the Cygnus Radio app on your computer or mobile phone, David, so you have the freedom of choice when it comes to Notes from an Artist live on the radio.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, another Jewish. Notes from an Artist podcast is streaming right now on Apple, Amazon, Buzzsprout, Spotify, and wherever podcasts are propagated. Listen to Notes from an Artist anytime on your own time. David, did you know that Notes from an Artist is in the top 10% of all 3.2 million registered podcasts?
No mishigas with that.
Notes from an Artist is heard in 2,063 cities, towns, villages, and encampments worldwide, and that includes 122 countries, territories, sovereign terrain, brothels, condominiums, timeshares, districts, provinces, mental institutions, wherever people cognate, coagulate, and gesticulate. Notes from an Artist is there.
I must tell you, the last time I gesticulated, it hurt.
At your age, you got to be careful when you gesticulate.
Absolutely.
And you matriculate. Visit our Notes from an Artist YouTube page. Why not? We have interviews from some of our high-profile past guests and some of the low-profile Easy for me to say.
Get the fish out of your mouth.
I tell you, see what happens when you put olive oil in my methadone? I can't do these things. Anyway, watch us with Ron Carter, Bill Wyman, Steve Vai, Joe Lynn Turner, Richard Thompson, Jaw Wobble, Phil Manzanera, Lenny Kay, Glenn Matlock, Michael DeBar, and Derek's good friend, the always cheerful, happy, peppy, upbeat Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. No comment from David. David has collapsed.
I mean, I just don't know what to say with this one. It's very funny. By the way, do you know that my German mother-in-law thought I should have called my boat the matzo ball?
You got along with her? Did you get along with her?
Yeah, I got along very, very well.
Very nice.
With my parents, that's for damn sure.
Okay. Well, my second mother-in-law was better than the first one. But as they go on, they get better, yes. And you can keep up with Notes from an Artist on our website, www.notesfromanartist.com. See what we're doing, and tell us when you get to know whatever it is we're up to. Okay, let us bring in Derek Shulman. David, let me introduce Derek to our audience member. He is a composer. He is a recording and performing artist. He's a singer. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He is a founding member of the iconic progressive rock collective known as Gentle Giant. Nice work if you can get it. Following his tenure in Gentle Giant, Derek became a record company executive. Now, Derek, prog rock bands, as I recall, Jethro Tull, King Crimson, they didn't look too kindly on record company executives. They would parody them. I remember Fripp and Exposure, certainly Ian Anderson took plenty of shots at them. But actually, without record company infrastructure, there would be no prog rock or any other rock for that matter.
Well, that's true. Effectively, that's if you didn't have someone to distribute your music, then your music would. Yeah, well, I mean, in those, I should take those words back. I mean, in those days, in the early days in the late 60s, early 70s, you built your audience by playing and becoming really good live and having a very good audience that would show up by word of mouth. You didn't need a record company per se to build an audience. However, you certainly needed a record company to get exposure to your music, which you recorded. That was part and parcel of what you did. They had a team which would get the music on radio, which is the main marketing tool for
Platform.
And they had PR and promotion men, et cetera, et cetera. So effectively, you got your music out. Well, certainly we did. And you're talking about Tull and those guys were great musicians and certainly had a great following at the time or even before they had the record deal.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting you signed such notable artists as Bon Jovi, Dan Reed, Network, Cinderella. You remember them, David. Kingdom Come, and Enough's Enough, another one of David's favorites. Pantera, Dream Theater. It's interesting, as you mentioned in the book, that when artists have to set up their own labels, they appreciated what the record industry did for them with all its faults.
Yeah, but yes, it is because it's difficult to not well these days there's a whole different animal. I mean, there's this streaming and God knows what else. Whereas back in the day the puzzle to get your music heard was about 10 pieces. Now it's about 10,000. So in this day and age, it's hard for an artist to be able to, no matter how good you are, to get your name out there and have people see them being as good as they are. So I don't know who's great out there anymore. I mean, there's so much music and so many outlets and so many gatekeepers that I don't know. You have to search around, and not many people have much time to search around.
Yeah, well, it's the best of times and worst of times in some ways. But getting to your book, don't take our word for it. Your new autobiography is called Giant Steps: From Stage Lights to Executive Heights. You get that? How it rhymes, David? Out in October 2025, just in time for the holidays. And it's on Jawbone Books, available in hard copy, digital formats. Derek will be selling them out of his trunk of his car, I would imagine.
Outside of Macy's with a cop.
Right. If you see Derek on the street, shake him down. It's interesting. We've had a few of your contemporaries on our show who have written autobiographies and semi-autobiographies. Phil Manzanera, Richard Thompson, John Altman, Steve Hackett, Bill Wyman. And they all noted that it was easy to write about themselves because, after all, they were there. An easy process for you or difficult?
That's a good question. Easy in some ways because obviously it was about me. However, some of the situations I found myself in over the many years I've been around, I kind of mitigated them to a degree because what I didn't want to write was a silly, I crashed, we burned, we went to rehab, we got this and that, and all the bullshit stuff you see with a lot of these kind of books. And what I wanted to hopefully explain was the music was the utmost important to me. Being authentic was the most important thing to me, but also my family and the dynamics between my brothers and me and family and even morals, if you like. Those things I wanted to make sure came across in the book as well as that being part of my whole being, including the music, of course.
Right. Well, it's interesting. You start the book off with very graphic details of your father's death. He was a jazz musician. It certainly threw the family into turmoil, but it also provided an inspiration for you, as you mentioned. It made you work harder. You thought you would be like him and not live past 50. And, it instilled a strong sense of responsibility for your mother, the family and to honor the memory of your father. So even though your dad lived a rock and roll lifestyle, you lived the exact opposite.
I did, and also my siblings did the same thing.
Mm.
It was a complete trauma for all of us. I have my elder brother Phil, who's alive still,
Mm.
who's in the band, and my sister who's older. She's been gone for quite a while, and my other siblings. We all, believe it or not, we were all worried about getting past the age of 50. It was such a shock to us. My father was he was a larger than life person. I mean, he was an incredible musician, someone who could literally pick up an instrument and within 5 minutes master it brilliantly. And whatever it was, even whether it's a horn, obviously horn and blowing instruments, clarinet, trumpet, whatever, and bagpipes, and someone who could literally pick up and read scores in any instrument. So that was always around the house. And then when he finished his gigs, which were late at night, 11:30, he'd come back with a couple of his friends and they played jazz in the front room, or and then listen to classical music until 3 a.m. And that was part of me growing up, and I thought that was a normal household. That was what everyone did, but I found out that wasn't the case.
Right. And so many of the people I mentioned, they talk about their young days listening to American rhythm and blues. All of our British guests, and I have to ask you the same question. What was it about American blues, R&B, born of slavery in the United States, that attracted British youth, from the Rolling Stones to the Gentle Giants?
Well, you have to remember in the late 50s and the 60s, there was a huge class system in England. There was a very small upper class, like 5 or 6%, a very tiny middle class. All the rest of us were all working class, living in pretty shitty conditions. We had no bathroom, as you read in the book. We'd have Friday night bath between us. We share the bath. So I think it wasn't. That was part and parcel of, okay, we're poor, but not like the African American experience. But I think the music was perceived to be, number one, much more interesting than the white bread stuff that you'd heard on the regular American radio. And I think the feel of the blues resonated with the working class British kids, because we were poor too, and we didn't have any money. We didn't, in certain respects, a lot of the kids who left school who didn't have a great education were bound to be not slaves, but certainly were going to be plumbers or people who worked on the streets or whatever.
They're factory workers.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of resonated, and everyone most of the kids I knew that liked music would tune into the American Forces Network and Radio Luxembourg, where they played stuff which Americans didn't even hear. Chess music, R&B, blues, soul, and it really resonated with all of the bands certainly in the mid to late 60s.
Yeah, and that's the same answer we get. And also, there was sort of an exotic element to blues because it was taboo.
Yeah, absolutely taboo, and but also the British public, like, it was taboo, and also in the 60s there was almost like there was a cultural revolution. So enjoying African American music went against your parents and grandparents' white bread sort of upbringings. So hey, we love Ray Charles, we love Joe Tex, we love Muddy Waters, et cetera, that. So that was, but that influenced just about every band that became huge over the next 10 years for the British band, should I say, that became the icons, if you like.
Right. Now, this book, I never heard of Simon Dupree and the Big Sound. And now, thanks to YouTube, I'm a big fan. I love watching your videos. I could see why you mentioned Syd Barrett was a little envious, because you guys had it together, and you mentioned that at the time Pink Floyd was more sizzle than substance. But Simon Dupree was a great band, and I love the story of you talking about how John and Yoko yelled at you When you jumped on their bed at Abbey Road.
Yeah, we recorded all our music for the most part. You know, we recorded many tracks, you know, and lots of singles at Abbey Road. We were there a lot, and we recorded a lot of radio shows. But yeah, we saw the great thing about Abbey Road and being signed to EMI and, you know, Parlophone Records was we had, you know, usually every band, not the Beatles, but because they got past that thing, but every band had a 3-hour session to do their single. And you go down to the canteen and you hang and you see the you know, the bands that you see on the road. You see Jimi Hendrix, you see Eric Clapton, you know, and we'd be hanging in the canteen. This is before anyone was like big. You know, we see each other. How was your session? Oh, that was good. And mine's coming up in a minute, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was an incredible experience. Just getting to know the bands that would ultimately become, you know, the biggest bands in the world. At the same time, this is a but sidebar. You meet Sir Edmund Bolt, the orchestra, you know, the London Symphony Orchestra, who recorded in Studio One, and the symphonic musicians. So it was fantastic.
I did not find it so odd to do a 3-hour session. Now, of course, we can talk about Steely Dan, and let's spend 5 hours doing it one take. But back then, 3 hours should be enough because you'd been so well rehearsed.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you had to do, yes, you had to go in and literally lay down your tracks, and if it was a 4-track that in those days,
right?
You know, they'd maybe bounce the vocal down, and you could do a double track or whatever and put another instrument down. But that was including the B-side. So
yeah.
So
but once again, because you were so well rehearsed, it wasn't an issue.
No,
I mean, obviously, you know, with you guys adding the mallet instruments and all the other stuff, it would probably take a little bit longer. But overall, your basic tracks were boom, done.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
So we you know, our band and Simon Dupree and Gentle Giant, one thing we had was a really good work ethic. I mean, we rehearsed our asses off. We didn't go in unprepared at all. You know, we were always, you know, if you weren't on tour and we weren't writing, we were rehearsing. We got that from the very start. You know, even putting the Simon Dupree together. And you know, we played a huge amount. That's the other thing. You play and play and play, and you realize you start to become pretty good once you, or not. If you're not very good, then you'll get booed off, and you won't do that as a living. Be it coming.
You know, I enjoyed listening to Kites. I look, I disagree. I think the video for Broken Hearted Pirates is great.
Completely stupid, but you know, it's a crazy stupid. But you know what? It was fun to do. The interesting thing about that thing was Dudley Moore.
Dudley Moore on piano, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And and we it was great to hang out with some of these personalities that came for sessions and became friends. Well, Elton, of course, you know, that was another one.
Reggie Dwight, yeah, he subbed for your keyboard player.
Derek, my sister was good friends. She was a songwriter in the 60s. She wrote with the guy who wrote Green Tambourine. They wrote real American pop, like groups like the Peppermint Rainbow and the Brooklyn Bridge and stuff like that. But she was good friends with Tony Hicks of the Hollies and Jim McCarty of the Yardbirds, drummer for the Yardbirds. So I knew about you guys. I guess I was 12 or 13 because she would bring back Melody Makers and NMEs.
Wow.
And your records never came to there was you on that thing. Then there was Davey Dozy, Beaky Mick and Tish, and all these odd groups that no one really heard in America. But there were a few import places that got all of that stuff. So, as a matter of fact, acquiring the taste, I think when I emailed you on LinkedIn, I said, that was an import for me. Much better vinyl, too. A much heavier vinyl, I thought British vinyl back then was.
Yeah, they spent more money. You know, in those days, the record companies were run by people that like music. How could I? You know, they were entrepreneurs who were they like musicians and music, and that's a whole different animal to when what happened in the late 70s into the 80s. Yeah, unfortunately, yes, Simon Dupree never made it over to the States, but we were very popular in Europe. I mean, we played Germany a lot of times, and Sweden, and Scandinavia, a lot of Northern European areas. In the UK, we were very popular. So we were making a good living, and had a couple of big hits, which ultimately became, to be honest, a millstone around our necks when we decided to break up the band and start Gentle Giant, to be honest.
Yeah,
Right.
it's interesting to watch Simon Dupree on video, and that entertainment element, that showbiz element that you had in the band carried over to Gentle Giant. And I think it's absolutely hysterical, David, that you said, Elton John, that name will never work.
Yeah, that we did, and the 6 months later he was top of the charts, and we were looking for scrambling around to get gigs, so, or it wasn't 6 months, about a year and a half.
But he turned you on to Spirit and Frank Zappa and Miles Davis. So yeah, you do mention that Elton or Reggie is quite the musical scholar.
100%. He was, when he joined the band, he loved being in the band, and as you read, and wanted to, me and Ray whispered in his ear about we're gonna, shut the band down soon, and he really did want to play in the band, and in fact, we went to his place in Watford and met Bernie as well. Bernie had just got together with him, played on several songs of Simon Dupree. And in fact, I saw him about 2 or 3 years ago, and we recorded a song called "I'm Going Home" that he wrote for us, and we had his demo, and he completely forgot about his demo. So I gave it to him. I said, "Reg," I called him Reg. I shouldn't have done that. She's like, "Hush, now, do you remember this?" And he said, "Man, I forgot about that track." And I said, it's a really great track. So if you go on YouTube and look, "I'm Coming Home," it's, Elton when he was Reg Dwight, and it's great. And he hasn't recorded it.
Wow, interesting. Well, I know Elton John recently released a treasure trove of demos that he did. And it's really remarkable to see. You talk about the hard work that you guys did. Bernie and Elton were constantly writing. I mean, it's like 30, 40, 50 songs that never were recorded, in his heyday and stuff. So it's interesting how the British had such a working class, blue collar ethos to what they were doing. And we said that Bill Wyman said the same thing about the Rolling Stones. We looked at everything as an opportunity. We survived World War II, so we were going to get the most out of everything.
That's part of it too. It was a very England was in a kind of a post-war shambles state, and yeah, the working class. I mean, in certain respects, as I said, most people were very working class. I was born in Glasgow. It wasn't even working class. It was third world. But yeah, you could either two ways to get out of that, the sort of class thing you're going to be bagged in for the rest of your life, was either be a footballer or a soccer player or a rock and roll musician. And I chose the latter. But I do, my education and our education, the Shulmans, if you like, we were lucky that we were quite bright, so we got scholarships to grammar schools, which were supposedly for the elite of the kids who were supposed to be the leaders in the next generation, if you like.
Right, and you suffered from workaholism, as you said. But even with all your education, you got fleeced, as musicians do, and this has probably helped you when you became an executive. You talk about worldwide artists. Yeah. I love the Trial by Pasta. That's an important section in the book to read. But the mafioso, Mr. Cristaldi, I believe he was.
Yes.
Right. Do you get nervous when you go and walk into an Italian restaurant?
I really worry about that question, though, because Tom's last name is Semioli. His family's from Sicily.
Yes.
You know what? You just asked a question there, and I just spoke to Phil on the weekend, and he's had the book, and he said, "You're in New York, right?" Yeah. He knows I'm in New York, and he said, "Well, thank God most of them are dead, but be careful out there, But it was they took us under their wing. I mean, it was it was very interesting that, but look, I mean, that was a period of time when their influence in the music business was all encompassing. Now it's Elon Musk or you know
Right.
or Daniel Ek or whatever. I think I prefer the mafia than what's happening.
And speaking of which, David and I hold court every so often at Arturo's on Houston Street. Are you familiar?
No,
Oh my
Best
goodness.
coal-fired pizza, bar none. The
Bar
best.
none. It's where the bass players hang out
of
on Wednesday nights.
course I do. Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. So since you're a
But I will make a
multi-instrumentalist,
suggestion, Derek. If you get invited to Rayo's, say you're busy.
I've been to Rayo several times
Me too.
with John Bon Jovi.
oh,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
It's interesting, you go through the records and things, and you talk about Giant for a Day being a pop rock album. But I think, the best musicians are good at doing lots of things. I mean, I started off playing new wave music in the 80s, and now I'm in an ambient band. David does his own work. He did studio work, and now he's doing an avant-garde thing. I love records by Chris Cornell, who did a dance record, even though he was known as a grunge artist. But when that album kind of didn't do so well in the marketplace, you saw a life after performing.
Yeah, well, I did. I mean, Giant for a Day was an attempt, to commercialize our music. It was a progression. It didn't hurt to try, but it wasn't. It was a stumble. But we came back with Civilian, which I think is a really good record, actually. But
Right.
we'd hoped that it would at least get us back into the mainstream, but it didn't. And I'm glad it didn't, because in retrospect, because you know what, when you start to come back and 10, 12, 15, 20 years later, you start to become a parody of yourself. And that's something that none of us wanted to be. You become your own tribute band. Yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was lucky to get a call from a friend who lived in England, who was in America, and he said, "Have you thought about joining a record company?" And I said, "No, I haven't. That's something I didn't want to think about." But I had to make a living of some kind. I didn't want to produce records, honestly. Ray did. That was not my thing. So I was scratching my head saying, okay, I've got enough savings for a little while, but boy, it's going to run out. And so I went to New York. I was in LA at the time to meet the guys at a new department, the rock department in Polygram Records. And I was offered the job, and called my wife and said, about being offered the job, I don't think I really want to do it. What do you think? She said, give it a shot. And I did. And for the next 30 years, I gave it a shot.
You did, and you went from Luke Skywalker to Darth Vader, as you say.
Effectively, yeah, we'll join the dark side.
Right. Granados Brothers, right? That's the record you produced for them, one of your early productions. Is that around the time, and I love this, on my 18th birthday, you married Sharon, and the best gig you ever played was singing Hey Jude at a Jewish wedding?
At our wedding, my wedding, yeah. And those guys were there, and like Ray was there, and so this klezmer band that my father-in-law, it was a big wedding, a big Jewish wedding, and they were all doing the horror and the if you know what that is, or
Yeah.
and klezmer music, and we hated it. So we just said, come on, let's take over this band, and we put on a gig, and we did a couple of Stones songs, and we finished the set with Hey Jude, and I mean, literally there were some Russian Jews that just came over, didn't know the language, but they knew the da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Well, you quickly realized the music business, and I guess you probably did before with Gentle Giant, that it's not art, it's business, right? The music business is 90% business and 10% art.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did, and that was quite a defining moment for me. I just remember going my first day at Polygram and going from office to office, and sitting down with whoever was there, and realizing every office had their own priority. I think that a lot of people, and knowing that if you were a priority at a lot of offices, you got the push at the label. And had I known then what I knew when I was in Gentle Giant, I think perhaps we'd have had a better push and reached a level which other bands kind of did, in the recording sense.
Right.
but yeah, I learned that yeah, it was about collectively getting the priority, if you like. And I had to do that from the inside then. So, I learned, I was a quick learner. And also, most of some of the people that were at the company, they loved music. Some of the others were in it for the perks and the lifestyle. And that bothered me a great deal, honestly.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, that came across pretty loud and clear throughout the second half of the book, that you were really upset about that. And it's I wrestle with that myself, because there comes a point in time, I guess, when all of us try to get to the next level. In other words, we stop playing the rock and roll game and go elsewhere with it. Late 80s, even into the early 90s, cocaine was still a very big part of everyone in the industry's lifestyle. When you take your book, Giant Steps, it's obvious you had leadership qualities when you were doing Gentle Giants, so it almost became a seamless transition for you. I really was impressed by that. Plus, you had the good luck of signing someone like a Bon Jovi, Cinderella, which was really a great blues rock band masquerading as a hair band. I've worked with Rex Brown. I know Pantera. They were all really talented musicians. I don't know if you knew this, but Rex was going to, I guess, a University of Texas. He was a jazz major on bass.
Yeah, no, actually, Rex just sent me a really, really nice little note, which I'll post about me signing the band and him remembering me hanging out and going to Joe's garage when and no one was signing them. And I was just completely blown away by this band. I mean, I knew about them because I was leaving Polygram going to ADCO, and they were just amazing. I mean, I was running a record company, but I went down, and within 3 songs, Phil was just an incredible frontman. But Dime and Vinny and Rex were just like, every one of them were such fantastic musicians, and also smart as hell, believe it or not. Even though they did lots of crazy things, but also very, very bright. But Rex just sent me a really great little essay remembering the time I went down, and they got rejected by every other record company because they were. But I became a fan within 2 songs. I went down and said, here's me running a record company. I almost jumped into the mosh pit. So I knew then what they had was going to turn me on, would turn millions of other people on as a live band.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned, right? That Kiss had great respect for you because you weren't into drinking and drugs. Very interesting reflections on just how to survive in the music business. I was a beat writer in the 90s, and my beat was Britpop, and the bands were huge in the UK, but they'd come here, they'd play New York, LA, Chicago, Dallas, and fly home and wonder why their records weren't on top of the charts. You mentioned that with the Jam. They do 8 cities, and they thought that was an American tour. But you mentioned also Bon Jovi. He shared the same working class ethos as you did, and the fact that they put in the road work is what made them successful.
Absolutely correct. I mean, after the first record, I mean, they went toe dog. I mean, having had the experience myself, going out into the world, not just America, and even on that first record, they went over to Europe, Japan, South America. They played little tiny places, or support to the bigger bands, but they played and played. And John had an incredible, the band, I mean, but John especially had an incredible work ethic, and knew where that was going as far as what he was doing. He was building his audience on a live basis, and that in those days they were on fire. Actually, in the early days, the Slippery Days and everything else, they were a great live band.
Yeah, I saw them.
They kicked ass. I mean, they really were. And John was he was a great frontman. And the girls loved him. The guys, liked him because their girlfriends liked him. So, but the work ethic was always there.
Well, you were simpatico with him. I mean, you won over his mom, which is a great story. And Portsmouth to Sayreville, it's a simpatico.
Exactly true.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he had a separate deal from the band, so he had some business sense from the very beginning.
very, very smart businessman, which kind of shocked me a little bit, but it shouldn't have, because in certain respects, I had, the same, I wanted my band, the Gentle Giant, to be paid properly, and
Sure.
I didn't want anyone to rip us off. So he had an ethic that, listen, I'm the guy that's putting the music together, and yeah, he said I wanted to be signed. I'm not sure if I want the band to be signed to the same deal, which kind of like threw me a loop, to be honest with you.
Sure.
And then I got into the part where he had signed his deal with his second cousin, who was ripping him off. But
Right.
there's all these rip-off things where, they were par for the course in those days.
Yeah, and you also helped AC/DC and Bad Company get back on track.
AC/DC were going to be dropped by Atlantic, which shocked the hell out of me. And I said to Doug Morris, who was running the Atlantic, I said, you can't drop AC/DC. He said, well, their deal is very big, and their last couple of records are stiffed. And I suggested, because I was part of the Warner Group, suggested that we trade artists, and I think Stevie Nicks, which is on that cover, I inherited, and I said, I'm going to inherit AC/DC, and I got together with those guys, and they trusted me because George Young, who's an Easy Beats, their elder brother,
Right?
Because from Simon Dupree and the Big Band, and we did some shows with them. So George said to Angus and Malcolm, he's a cool guy. He's a musician. So they let me in, if you like, and so I said, you guys should really come back to where you were and record in Vancouver with, my guys, Bruce Fairburn and Bob Rock.
Right.
And The Razor's Edge was produced there, and Thunderstruck came out, and they were back to where they were.
When Bad Company and AC/DC, rediscover their audience, did you ever think, oh, maybe I could work the same with Gentle Giant, or was that never a consideration?
No, not a consideration. The chapter was closed. I'd been asked by quite a few promoters just after that period, you guys should. And honestly, again, as I said earlier, I don't want to be my own tribute band. I don't want to be, someone who is being a parody, if you like.
Right, overstay your welcome, right.
That'd be that. And I think unfortunately, a lot of bands who still have to make a living, and I understand that. But, when there's a band that has a name with no members and no former members, it kind of like, it doesn't bother me so much, but I feel a little sad about it, honestly.
Well, that's the business side of it. Again, you have now what's known as trademark bands, where there's no original members, or maybe if you're lucky, you'll get a replacement or two. Interesting to find out all of your admirers Questlove.
The Questlove is a huge fan, and that shocked me. I think it's in the book, I'm not sure, but when I went to the Tonight Show, because I was running this company, Frontiers Records, I was bringing Ann Wilson backstage to do a slot with the Roots.
That's right.
It was unbelievable that this happened. And the musical director said, your name's Derek Shulman, right? I said, yeah. He said, you're not the Derek Shulman of Gentle Giant, are you? I said, yeah. And he said, hold on a second, hold on. And Ann Wilson was on my side, and she was wondering what the hell's going on. and out comes Questlove and the band, and they were all over me. They're literally looking at me and saying, "We're not worthy," to me.
Yeah, sure.
And I say, "Hold on, am I being pranked here?" But no, they were really. I mean, we were favorites of the band and Questlove and those guys. We've been in touch ever since. And I found out that the band, Gentle Giant music, was very much loved in the hip hop community.
Interesting. Well, it was a musician's band.
Hey, Tom, what was that story that Phil Manzanera told us? That he gets a phone call from a record company and says, you're going to be really, really happy in about 3 weeks. Then the publishing company calls him and says, you're going to really, really be happy in about 3 weeks. Who was the artist?
It was Eminem sampled one of Phil Manzanera's solo records, an obscure record. I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't 801. K-Scope. They sampled a song off of K-Scope, which and Roxy Music was never a big deal here either. And Gentle Giant probably played to more people than Roxy Music here in the beginning. And they sampled a song without him knowing it. And of course, he doesn't own his songs. And Eminem twisted it around so much that Phil Manzanera didn't even recognize his own motif that they had taken, and it became such a big hit. And quote Phil Manzanera, he made more money off of that Eminem sample than his entire career. And Roxy Music, it's a household word. Yeah,
Not a shabby band.
not
No.
a shabby band. So it just shows you. But you mentioned Gentle Giant has been sampled. Tribe Called Quest, Run the Jewels. So
Travis Scott.
yeah.
Travis Scott, like a couple of years ago, I mean, yeah, last year, he opened the show with Proclamation. I mean, and it was hilarious seeing 30,000 kids, 20,000 kids singing "We're da 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 da," you know, and it was just what, you know, it's just like, and it was just a really ridiculous but fun and gratifying thing to see that world has embraced our music, and you know, and in fact, I think some of the best progressive music comes from the hip hop world in certain respects.
Yeah.
Right. It's very interesting what they do, twisting things around to surprise people with the rhythms behind the raps, if you like.
Oh, absolutely. And I've been delving into hip hop. The problem with hip hop, I think, in the United States, unfortunately, is that the establishment pushes the more racist, misogynist, pornographic hip hop. But I've been listening to a lot of jazz hip hop artists, Jazzmatazz, Taz, Guru, Theo Crocker, Roy Hargrove, who sadly passed, Nicholas Payton. And it's a fascinating genre. Look, Miles Davis, his very last record, Doo-Wop, was a hip hop record. So who knows where he would have gone. But it's interesting. Look, it's just like you kids, the Simon Dupree was stealing guitar riffs. Now they're sampling it. So what's the difference? It's just a different tool that they're using.
We all are influenced / borrow, you know, things from other people and develop it to become our own. So, you know, it's what it is. I mean, Kerry, our keyboard player, who has a degree in composition and percussion, he was obviously influenced by his background in classical music. So he probably would borrow something from Palestrini, which is Old English, or he loved Tchaikovsky's melodies. You know, so there's always something there that's in the back of your head that says, okay, I love that. Let me see what I can do. And your fingers start to work, and everything's an influence to your work.
Right. We do that as musicians, right, David? We try to take things and we can't play them, and it turns into something else.
And I do that.
Well,
That's how I write
I
songs.
gotta tell you, Derek, my first solo record, I made the keyboard player stick to a marimba setting for all 7 songs on that first record specifically, and it didn't dawn on me until I was reading that section on Questlove. I went, shit, that's where that came from.
That's funny. That's great.
It's true, yeah.
And your records are being restored in a glass house, right? The remix after the tapes were lost. And
yeah, I'm in the studio. Well, excuse me, I'm in the studio right now because that was the only album we didn't have the multis to. Wherever they disappeared to, they're gone. And I'm in the studio now working in Brooklyn with an engineer who's actually a superb engineer, Aber Pinheiro, who's won a Grammy. He works with a lot of jazz musicians. And the highest end, I shouldn't use the term AI, but I'm gonna, where it can actually not just, you know, separate the stems, it can actually separate the instruments, which is incredible. You know, there's a whole new era of AI. And so I'm in the middle of mixing in a glass house and in 5.1 and Atmos, and it sounds amazing. And I think that one in particular needed a remix because that that was the one album which, when Phil, my brother, left, that was the one which we did right after. And we very quickly in a very dark period of our existence as Gentle Giant.
Yeah, that's that type of AI you just described. I think that's what was his name? Jackson. Peter Jackson did with Let It Be, where they were able to actually recognize each voice. They trained AI to do that. Obviously AI it's a big kerfuffle of people talking about AI, but you think about it, the benefits of AI to restore, let's say, Charlie Parker or Enrico Caruso or Gentle Giant.
Yeah, at least we're restoring our own music. We're not making someone else's music or pretending we're someone else. It sounds amazing. It does. And the fact that you can separate the kick to the snare to the cymbals, and actually you can put a little bit of a verb on the these are things that we would have done had we had time and money back in the day to do it.
Of course, right. Yeah, obviously somewhere, I'm sure in 1935 when the electric guitar was invented, the guitar player said, that's not a guitar.
Right. Anyway, so it's kind of a lot of fun, and hopefully it'll come out next year. And but that I'm doing in fits and spurts, because obviously my book is I think that's interesting to actually see it in print, which I think I have on.
Look at that.
I don't know. You have one, but
actually, see, David, I told you he's going to be selling them out of the car there.
I tell you,
oh God, you're right.
And we get the lowly PDF,
Get our PR guys to get one over to you, man.
Yeah.
Please.
I just got the advanced copies literally yesterday, so and it's just weird to see it in print.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I love, again, wrapping up, the story of Tiago, where a Gentle Giant saved his life. The music saved his life. I love the quote in the book, the only limit to creativity is narrow-mindedness.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I think.
Yeah, very appropriate. So tell us, Derek, what's on your bucket list now that you're a best-selling author, thanks to this show?
Well, as I said, I'll be selling this, outside of Macy's with a cop. Look, you know what? I'm an old guy, so there are only so many things I could do with my back, but no, I'm remixing the In a Glass House,
right?
And we'll put that out, and then I don't know. Hopefully, I'll be breathing for a few more years, and and maybe a rocking chair sounds good to me.
Well, you look and sound great. Well, thanks for being our guest. We will let you know when this airs, so you can break the internet like a Kardashian on social media. And do come and join us. We'll have to give you a tip when we're at Arturo's.
Please do. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, leave the gun, take the cannoli, and all that. You know how that works. So, hey, Derek, thanks for being a guest. We'll be in touch when we air this, and you'll get the links and everything else.
Absolutely.
All right, great to see you. Bye-bye.
Enjoy.
I'm so excited. I'm going to get cream.
Let Moxie Marco in your face.
The closer you shave, the more you need creamy, soothing, medicated Noxema.
Let Noxema cool your face. The razor don't.
You've got a great pair of hands.
David, fantastic interview with Derek. Thanks so much for him being on. Big fans of Gentle Giant. David, tell us about the Derek Shulman playlist you have curated.
Well, as I said in the interview, I saw the Simon Dupree and the Big Sound band name in the early Melody Makers and New Music Expresses, but I had never really heard the band. So we added 4 tunes from Simon Dupree, including your favorite song, Kites. Then we were able to do 4 Gentle Giant songs. And then I thought, well, let's do some music of the bands he signed. So there's a Pantera tune, a Cinderella song, a Bon Jovi song, and a couple other things that will make your heart just happy.
Happy. Very nice, David. You're a nice Jewish boy.
Ah, Val.
Oh, Val. Anyway, thanks for listening. My name is Tom Semioli. David, introduce yourself one more time.
I'm David Schrull, and Have a great weekend.
See you next week, folks.
You gotta fucking be kidding me! How dare you call yourselves professional?
Due to unforeseen circumstances, this show will remain on the air until further notice.